Hello and welcome and Happy New Year to everyone. So it's particularly miserable outside, but anyway, we've got someone who's going to brighten everything up for us. It's Dr. Claire Minshull, who is a rehabilitation and conditioning specialist. So Claire, thank you for joining on. We don't normally share the date, but it's the 2nd of January. It's hammering it down outside. So thank you for joining me.
A big ask to brighten up everybody's demeanour. But, yeah, it is pretty miserable outside, but my pleasure to join you.
Well, I remember like in our communication before Christmas, and it was like, actually, I think I'm going to need some motivation on like this first day back in. So yeah, thank you for that.
So in the diary.
Get it in the diary. We're doing it. It's fixed. So yeah, so we were just talking just before I put the recording on. So how do you find it when you're actually taking some downtime over Christmas?
Yeah, as we were discussing, it's pretty hard, isn't it, when you work for yourself? There's always something there. It's always there. Never really properly clock out, do you? And then if you do get the downtime, which is quite rare, that's when you start thinking about other things. I'm sure you're the same. Like you're kind of firefighting a lot of the time when you're fully kind of in it in operation, and then that downtime, if you get enough of it, then you start to develop those. I certainly do. I'm sure others do as well. You start to develop the ideas, and so it's really important to do it. But being able to craft that downtime in is a challenge. But yeah, this time I said I'd definitely give myself a week off. Which I did, and as I was just saying, there it's kind of almost that permission. See, there's a less guilt associated with not working.
Yeah, no, I think it is really important, and that's actually one of my things for this year is to actually give yourself some time, because no one really if they contact you over Christmas, it's either really good or it's really bad. So it's like you don't get much
Please
around
let it be the lottery.
So I think it is interesting, but to try and give yourself that time when you are firefighting, as you mentioned there, it's challenging when you're trying to always do things. But that is one of my things this year is actually, I'm going to just allocate some time where you're working, but you're trying to be creative and give yourself some structure for doing that.
It's wise.
How about you? What any particular things that you got planned for 2024 in terms of resolutions?
No, I don't make resolutions. Just because, well, I've never really made resolutions. I think, if you're going to do something, stick to it and do it whenever it's appropriate. So, but yeah, in terms of 2024, yeah, lots and lots on. I've also tried as well to be a little bit more savvy, I think, with my time, as you were just alluding to there. I find it difficult to say no to things. And I also think probably I've got this, what's the word, I suppose, or maybe I overestimate how much I can do to the, the standards that I want to do them. So, I think probably, I've backed off a little bit in terms of commitments this year, just so that I can build the things that I want to. So we're talking about being creative. So I've got another course coming online that I need to spend some really good time to develop that and produce that. And then there's the other company joint approach that we're raising for in a few days' time. It goes live, and yeah, just all the other stuff, training and. I've just been appointed visiting professor at Leeds Beckett University as well. So there's other stuff. And so, yeah, just trying to be a little bit more savvy. Still lots on the books and lots to do, which I'm really, grateful for and really humbled to be able to do this. But yeah, thinking ahead. So kind of mapping out, for example, in-person courses, how many of those can I, do I want to commit to throughout the year and to enable these other things to happen. So, yeah, I mean, a short answer, lots on the books, lots to come. But hopefully I'll be able to craft it in a way that I feel a little bit more like I'm on top of it a little bit more.
Yeah.
By,
If you do that, then let me know how you've done it, because that sounds good. And also, so how are you going to? What's your criteria for things you're going to say no to then?
So that's a good question. That's a really good question. So the one is timing. So I've said and committed to so far this year for in-person courses. Yeah, I absolutely love running in-person courses. I love meeting up with people, and particularly, those that want to do the S&C's type stuff in rehab. That's what I'm really excited about. So it's a fantastic experience. I'm humbled to be able to travel all over to do that. But it is quite time consuming, particularly with engagements abroad. So I've committed to one a month for that, such that it gives me enough time to be able to do other things within that month. So timing is one thing, and how much time it takes out of my, for anything, conference invitations, any part of work, how much time it's taking. And then certainly, I think the first thing really actually is, as again, many people will be the same, I'm sure. You get lots of invitations from lots of places. Is it something that I feel like I can do a good job at? Is this a right fit for me and for them? And so, if I feel like that's possibly out of my scope of expertise, then, that's something I'll certainly flag up. It's got to be worth everybody's while. And I don't want to be stood there talking about things that I know nothing, or the other people know more about than I do. So certainly that, and then time, and then resource as well. So whether that be human resource or financial resource, and you do have to balance the books as well. So that income, you can input, output, and also I do a lot of free stuff as well. So kind of to help people out, and make sure that that's still on the book. So it's not that everything has to be, I don't know, crazy kind of in terms of fiscal benefit. There isn't a hard and fast answer to that. It's a good question, but yeah, time, whether or not it's within my wheelhouse, and what I suppose that input output equation is for everybody. Again, yeah. I don't know if I've nailed that either yet, but trying.
It's difficult, because I know that's the question I get asked from some of the people I work with, that kind of non-exec people in the company. Is like, you get asked that all the time. It's like, what are you going to say no to this year, and what is the criteria? Because it's great having opportunities, but then when you've got so many and you maybe can't fulfill them as much as you would like to, or you can't do them to the right level. So it's as much for me to get me back into the mindset of saying, actually, no, we've got a plan, we know what we're doing, and let's stick to it. We've done this plan for a reason, and how you do it. But yeah, it's never easy when you want to do things. However, so I've got that some of the guys in the team are really good at just being like, giving them permission to say no to me doing some of these things, because otherwise you could do everything.
Well. Being aware of that as well, how you're influencing other people, is a good point too. It's a tough one. It's a tough one, and I guess as well, in those moments of clarity, kind of just come back to, what am I doing everything for? What's the purpose? What do I really want to be able to affect, to change, to help? And if it's not aligned to that, then I'm sorry, probably it's a no. And there's other things as well. You get less genuine, should I say, kind of inquiries and asks where. It's funny. I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine over Christmas, who he works for himself as well. He runs a really successful garage, and he was saying, I think everybody should have a go at being self-employed for a couple of months, just to understand what it is and what's involved in that. So and again, I'm sure you absolutely could echo this, but the time it takes to respond to an ask, an inquiry, can you do X, Y, and Z? And you think, oh, that sounds really good. You spend the time putting together maybe a package. I had one very recently, and I won't say from where, but quite a large institution with a significant ask, which took a lot of time to put together. Contacted my web developer because it involved setting up a separate educational kind of arm to the platform for just bespoke to them, and all these kind of things. And you have all these levels of meetings, and then at the end there's a flat line afterwards, where you've spent all that time and effort, which is, it's money, it's your time, and there's no comeback. So those, trying to identify those up front is a helpful strategy as well, because if you've never been in self-employment, or you've never been, I suppose, charged with your own income generation from scratch, not a salary, then you start to realize, or you wouldn't realize, the work that might go into things that detracts from other things that has been, if you run your own companies, what the consequence would be if it didn't come off. So
yeah, no, it is. I think it is. Like, I can definitely empathize with that, and it's annoying, isn't it? Sometimes you're like, you're trying to move yourself away from it, because normally it's like with the public sector, whether it's universities, NHS, they're massive operations, and they're doing a load of other things, and they're performing a function in it. But to you, it's like personal, isn't it? A lot of the time, and trying to remove yourself from that can be quite difficult. It's like, well, I've just done all this for nothing. You give us like a one sentence response. Yeah, no, we're not doing that, or something. And it is frustrating. So I can definitely empathize with that one.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's having your eyes wide open to it. So the more you do it, the more you're in this arena, the wiser you become to that. And dealing with the NHS, for example, that's another entity in itself, of which, through my other company Joint Approach, we've had significant interactions with, meetings with, proposals, etc. And we understand the different levels of hierarchy, the different metrics at different levels of hierarchy, the time course, as you're kind of from to getting a yes maybe, or a no, or the different levels of financial sign off that people can. Oh, it's just a minefield. So it's having that knowledge as well to, okay, we will do this, and it's a calculated, I suppose, investment, really, isn't it? A calculated investment. We'll go ahead and kind of put all these things together, or not, because we haven't got that. It will never translate, or for whatever reasons. But yeah, I think that's something that's, with being self-employed, I've learned a lot about over the past 10 or so years, and trying to identify, not that you don't want to be helpful, you really, really do, but ultimately, if that person's not able to affect, and it's usually the case, isn't it, that inquiry that comes in, if it's a big thing, we'd really like to do X, Y, and Z. Perfect, we'd love to do that with you. However, that sign off comes from however many echelons above them, and we'll do everything we can to support you to get that. But yeah, it's a challenging one. Maybe I'll pause there.
Yeah, well, no, it is. I get it. It's exactly right. It's like, well, yeah, but I need to do this bit of it, as in them, and then it's above me, or it's out of my hands. And it's like, you can't. It's difficult to say, well, no, we need this answer, because they can't give it, and it's.
Yeah.
So it is trying to get the criteria as specific as you can, and say, look, we're happy to do it. And then if you lose it, you win it, whatever it is, you can sort of accept that. But then I
really do empathise as well at that clinician level. If we're talking kind of NHS-esque type levels, where the clinician wants to do the best for the patient, and they have their hands tied so tightly in some circumstances that I feel their frustrations as well. So they want to help. I suppose is amplified there. So it's just a tough one. It's a tough one, because ultimately those individuals and us want to help patients When you feel like you're perhaps sometimes for silly reason not permitted to do so, it's challenging. And I feel how others feel, being in that, delivering that care or not being able to deliver that care, for example.
Yeah, and then how have you found that then? So you're self-employed, but clinical background and doing that as well. How did you find that transition, or in terms of being able to, you've got to charge for your time, you've got a lot of these offers. How did you find that?
Yeah, well, that was a big learning curve. So I'm not a clinician, actually. So my background is initially sports science, then exercise science and rehabilitation, PhD, and academic and research, all with a clinical emphasis, so working with patients. But I was in a salaried position, so I was working within an academic institution, or I left Nottingham Trent University and went and led a collaboration in Scotland between two universities in the trauma and orthopedic department there. So I had a little bit more freedom, but still I was salaried. So that transition going from not being salaried to then, okay, no money coming in, what are you going to do? Obviously, you've got plans and ideas and things you want to affect and change and put in place to earn money. But that conversation around money, certainly the conversations I've had with other friends and colleagues who have been academics in the past, it can be really prickly. And we don't talk very much about salaries and money and stuff like that in England anyway. We're quite reserved. So that was a tough one, to be fair. To have those conversations about remuneration and what things might cost, figuring out as well what the value of certain things were, and my time. So to be honest with you, I found it difficult initially, having the financial conversations. Now it's just a part of the exchange, and you kind of learn that. But initially, yeah, very. Yeah, very different. Certainly as well in the area of healthcare as well. So it becomes maybe perhaps even more awkward when, again, when you are talking with friends and colleagues who are being salaried physios or doctors or whatever. You're in a position where you're there because you want to help people, and then you're asking, there's a financial element to it. It just sometimes feels a bit prickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it does. And I think you're right. I think in this country, I think the combination of this country is quite reserved when it comes to sales. Who isn't in sales? Everyone's doing some sort of selling in whatever they're doing, because everyone's getting paid, or hopefully they are. And then I think the healthcare piece is an interesting bridge of, like, when we've worked with external sales companies that come into us, it's like, it doesn't feel right with what they would say. This is what you should be doing with speaking to people. It's like, it just doesn't feel quite right when you're speaking to clinicians about when they're going to be speaking to patients, because you're trying to help them help drive them forward. And like, everyone needs money to grow and invest and develop and give better service. Yeah, well, no, exactly. So yeah, it is. It's a fine balancing act. And I did one of these with a guy called Frank Benedetto, who's American, and it's so different. Like him, it's really. I think some of his stuff is like, yeah, great, and I think other pieces of his, like, it's so contradictory, particularly to like the NHS way of doing things. And I think we're at a real interesting crossroads in private healthcare. We've seen over the last 3 or 4 years, it's just exploding, but it's still at that point where it's different. So what are your thoughts on like where like that healthcare piece is going at the moment?
Boom. I don't know, honestly. What you're saying about kind of private healthcare expanding, I think that's a good chunk of that is because the NHS is it's drowning, isn't it? That conversation could go on forever. All the things that need to be improved and all the deficiencies. And if you think about the staff and how the staff are at their wits' end and work to the bone, I honestly don't know. I feel like some days I hope that it's the NHS is recoverable, but I'm so glad I'm not in charge of anything to do with affecting that, because where would you even start? There's such, when you work within the NHS, of which I have done, and then you also look at supplying to the NHS. So, for example, joint approach, you can see all the layers of organizational, and I wouldn't just say it's a hierarchy, it spins off as well. So you've got people kind of going up the chain, but also you then need to go out the chain to, affect change on some fairly standard, simple things, potentially at a clinical level. And you can see that there is a lot of potentially unnecessary steps, because that, for example, putting together a 40-page document, nobody's going to look at it, right? But the time and effort required to put that together, but also then somebody who's compiled that for a good reason. It feels like there's struggling to describe it. I think frustration is a good word, I think, to describe how I feel about it. But in terms of its being able to be resurrected to what it was, I think we're potentially struggling a lot. It's broken, and the people in it have been broken, and I just I feel for them. But I don't know. I hope that we can put in place what's needed. And then in terms of the private healthcare, people are investing in private healthcare because they can't get, not everybody, but they can't get seen on the NHS. So again, just look at some of the data from our joint approach program, some of that qualitative analysis. People have done that. So they've gone privately for their joint replacements or to get clinician appointments because the waits have been so great, and you can see that. So it's no wonder that private healthcare is expanding. But what to do? I'm not a politician or a health economist, so I don't know. What do you think?
I agree with you. It is a really challenging one because I've had so many amazing experiences with the NHS. For me personally, getting treatment, like quite a recent one where it was everything that was done, like could not have been better. It was like dermatological thing. It was like straight in, saw top professor, amazing. It was literally, this coincidence, but it's literally 10 minutes walk from my house. Go there, everything was just brilliant, like just really, really impressive. And you just think, what an incredible service that you've been able to experience at no charge. The GP bit wasn't great. It took me about 30 queue line at the GP. But other than that, it was absolutely brilliant. I had another one with where I broke my toe playing, just even A&E at Wythenshawe, and I was seen within like 5 minutes and was like, yeah, this is great.
It's excellent.
So it's like there's so many really good things. It's just like when you think of like outpatient MSK and some of those things, you just think that is just not going to come back now. It's just very unlikely. And so like for us, we've had that shift where we're really trying to support private clinics with like, well, how can we assist on that? How do we help them invest in the tech that they need to do that, and the training and so on? So there's been a massive shift in our whole business really over the last 4 years because of diagnostic ultrasound, shockwave, and like the objective testing kit that you and I have discussed. So it's exciting, and it's just I think it's going to take a couple of years to find its feet of where it goes. And I agree. I really hope the NHS can stabilise and find where it can really be helpful, and then the private sector be able to support and offset that. Because if you go to a lot of private clinics, the prices are so cheap really for what you're getting. Like for a physio session, 50 quid or whatever it is. It's like, it's not a lot of money when you're looking at other things of more aesthetic things or cosmetics. Like my fiance, when she gets her nails done, it's like, my God, that's a load of money, or eyebrows, which, you know, then physio, it's like, well, that is really important, but the value I don't think has been put on that previously. Whereas I think now there's a good shift to see that there is people really value, because you can get seen quickly by really good people and get great treatment.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it didn't come across that I was in any way bashing the NHS. I'm not at all. The people within it are phenomenal, and if anything, hopefully it came across that again, it's the irony, really. The people are there because they want to help. They want to help people, and they're in the NHS and they're doing amazing things. But yet they are the ones that are suffering because more and more and more burdens placed upon them, and then resources are taken away. And what are we doing here? You know, like, these individuals are tremendous, and like you see, when you've got that joined up service as well with the level of expertise. You can't fault it when it works, but it's like other things are getting in the way of that.
No,
or it
agree.
definitely is other things getting in the way of that, of course. But yeah, what to do to solve it?
Yeah, no, it is. No, it is. I think it is. I agree with you. I was giving 2 examples for me personally going through it, but when I deal with that on a day-to-day basis through work, and you can see a lot of friends that I've got there, you get a lot of things knocked out of them because it's just budgets. But I've been hearing budgets are being horrendous my entire 16 years. There's never been any money, but then there is obviously a lot of money, and it's just, it does need something happening. So yeah, hopefully. But we will stop there, because that could be a whole talk on itself.
Could get quite political as well. So
gets political, I know.
Swiftly on. Yeah.
So yeah, in terms of you then, so like, how did you get involved? Like, where are you from, and how did you get involved in this path?
I went to university to do sports science because that's the only thing that I was really interested in. So I did human biology at A level, which kind of that's the thing that I enjoyed most out of all the studies that I really did, I suppose. So then I went to and also I was playing lots of sport, obviously. So okay, is there a way to combine the two? I had no idea what I wanted to do beyond that, and nobody in my family had been to university before. So I went to university, did sports science. I was like, this is great, human physiology. Then I found kinesiology in my 3rd year, and that was it, really. That was neuromuscular physiology. That's exactly what I want to do. But at the time, like, the only jobs available, and this is going back some years, really were to be a PE teacher, which I didn't want to be a PE teacher or a coach. And I think there might have been one exercise physiologist job in the whole country at that time. So that's, dare I say, 1997 when I finished my undergraduate degree. But fortunately, at the time, there's so much kind of serendipity, I think, right place, right time, and also being extremely lucky. Within the kinesiology module at my 3rd year, this guy came in who I didn't know who he was. He was called Di Reese. He was an orthopedic surgeon at Oswestry, and he came to teach us a little bit about the knee joint. And then I was doing, for my dissertation, stuff to do with EMG and force production and fatigue. And then I started to learn about the ACL and the epidemic of injuries, ACL injuries in team sports, but particularly with females. And then the PhD position came up as I finished university, because I had no idea what I wanted to do. Applied for a PhD, and that was working with Di Reese. So if anybody's kind of familiar with orthopedics, his name resonates far and wide. I know you can see you smiling there. Actually, just for Chris, he's written his memoirs. He's retired many years ago now. But he's written his memoirs, and like, the book is this thick, and he sent me a copy over Christmas. So yeah, he's such an amazing orthopedic surgeon, not at all like you assume orthopedic surgeons to be. He did not have a demigod status at all, and he was inclusive. He was encouraging, and so I did a PhD with him as my clinical supervisor, and a guy called Nigel Gleeson, who was my academic supervisor in neuromuscular physiology, and I was writing a prospective randomized control trial to enhance electromechanical delay rate of force development following ACL reconstruction, which at the time was, you're looking back, how forward thinking that was as a team, not just me. From 1998, that these things are only just starting now to come to the fore. We managed to get one meta-analysis on rate of force development data just last year or the year before, following ACL reconstruction. So it's taken a good while. But anyway, I did my PhD with him and the team, and it was like a multidisciplinary team. So there was, as you know, Andrea Bailey, physio, another physio there as well, Jane, a professor in sports medicine, which was my academic supervisor, two orthopedic surgeons, Diary, Simon Roberts, registrars, and we were all there, and us as PhD students and sports scientists, we were all there as this multidisciplinary team. I thought that was normal, right? So you get, I don't know, some guy from some athlete, Premiership athlete, footballer, Olympic athletes flying in to see him, and they get this care and they get the assessments. And I was developing assessments using magnetic stimulation, looking at capacity versus capability. And then you get the farmer who fell off his Land Rover roof and trying to chase his cow, ruptured his ACL, and they'd all get the same service. And, it's absolutely phenomenal. So phenomenal, I decided to rupture my own ACL and then become the recipient of that care. But then when I left, that's when I realized that wasn't normal, as in normal practice. And again, he was so blessed, and on his shoulders and others, to show me what's possible. So I left for a year. I went traveling and came back and got a job at Nottingham Trent University, set up the sports medicine degree strand, and still kept my collaborative links with Oswestry. And then I started to realize, when you're trying to integrate research and look at provision, that's where I really started to see these gaps where what I thought was, standard, or mainly standard, was not provided. But what it did do for me, show me what's possible. And that's been like the bedrock of, I suppose, my approach thereafter. I left Trent after about 7 years or so, went to, as I said, to Scotland. And that's where I saw this really, really stark gap between what I knew and I was teaching and I was doing and researching in terms of even the basics of neuromuscular physiology, rehabilitation, conditioning, and what was provided either preoperatively, which was nothing really, or postoperatively. Clearly, trauma, you can't have much preoperative intervention, but for TKRs and THRs you can, and that was the biggest shock for me. So some of the stuff that I thought was very basic, and assumed, I made these assumptions which were completely wrong, which is where the systematic review came from, considerations of the principles of resistance training for the management of knee osteoarthritis, just to get this in the literature as well. What is it that's provided, delivered, recommended for management of knee OA before we even get to TKR? And that's where I was like, right, okay, I had the space to think a little bit more. So I had two part-time positions, if you like, from two universities coming into this collaboration. So it's like I developed the fuller picture then to set up Get Back to Sport, albeit Get Back to Sport was running already, and it was called Get Back to Sport because people often would just ring my office at Trent and go, I've hurt my knee, or I've had rehab, I've had ACL reconstruction, I can't get back to sport. So it's constantly a sports emphasis. But what I have done and continue to do is draw from the sports performance literature basic practice and integrate that into rehabilitation, because the neuromuscular musculoskeletal system is, you know, the same whether it be an athlete or whether it be a 70-year-old person who just wants to walk the dog. Clearly there are going to be differences, but however, we still have nerves that conduct impulses, we still have activation, we still have properties to or need for properties, muscular properties, to be fast, responsive, strong. So why are we doing something different in terms of rehabilitating them or preconditioning them for surgery? Why are we doing this differently if we know these other things are important? And what are the basic ways in which we do this within a performance setting? Now what we need to do is bridge that gap. So I sit in this gap. I'm not I'm not a clinician, but I'm trying to pull these two things together to integrate what we know is best practice from interventions with individuals that aren't injured and we want to perform optimally, to those individuals that are, maybe they're athletes, but maybe they're not athletes. And we're looking at that recuperation and things are important. And how do we then rehab and conditioning those to either help prevent future injury, to optimize their rehabilitation, to get them to be able to just do ADLs, you know, that kind of thing. So that's when I went two-footed straight into self-employment after that time, and started to develop courses for clinicians to help, you know, share my knowledge with them and maybe some ideas on how we can adapt exercise and to account for clinical considerations such that we can still deliver the best available interventions.
And what was the vision then? So when you were setting that up, what did you have a specific goal in mind or a clear vision for it?
Not really. Not really. As in, yes, but it was a long way off. So I still think about it now. What I would really like to have is a physical entity, which is the Get Back to Sport, if you will, centre, where we have evidence-based practice. We have a gym that's a rehabilitation gym, and we have research going on there. We have PhD students. So it's almost like tiers. You got the rehab with the physios that are upskilled and kind of doing the rehab with the patients. Patients have got somewhere to come where they don't feel intimidated or different, but yet, you know, kind of in that gym environment. We've got a research level as well, and maybe some of those participants are the patients down below, and then we've got a teaching entity as well at the top. So anybody out there with a few million who wants to help, that's what I really wanted to engineer. And you know, to some extent, I've achieved probably all of those things independently. It's just not under a single umbrella or entity, but that would be, you know, that's where I was kind of, the thing that I was kind of headed towards, but I didn't really know at the start how that would look. I just needed to see if there was an appetite really for this type of, it's called strength and conditioning. People knew what strength and conditioning was, although it's basically exercise prescription and neuromuscular physiology, but that's not the fashionable way of saying it. So if there was an appetite for that with clinicians, you know, to help with rehab and prehab or hab.
Yeah, no, I think there is, like we've, you know, Andrew McCauley's a friend of mine, and his course has done really well in terms of that sort of area, and I think that rehab piece is massive, isn't it, in terms of actually pulling it all together. And there's it's definitely the way it's all going. And so, like, from your perspective, then it's sort of that's taking what you did at RJAH and sort of creating this and pulling it all together. Is that sort of your sort of aim to replicate some of the things that you were doing there?
Kind of. So the Get Back to Sport is the entity through which I deliver education and training, and I think that's probably coming on for 7 years now. And that's in person, but online. So fortunately, I'd gone online the year before COVID, so that was a blessing. So I'm able to kind of scale that a lot more, and develop more courses. So there's an idea of what I want an individual to have should they take all the courses available in terms of assessment, but not just assessment. We're thinking about conditioning, what we're aiming for, blah, blah, blah. So there's an education piece there, but it's all with, I want to help, I want to help clinicians, but ultimately they help the patient. So the joint approach program is that direct to patient. So that's an online multidisciplinary program for the management of NEOA. So it's integrating what I teach in terms of the exercise prescription alongside psychology. So we call it mindset. The behavior change thing is massive. So whilst I'd like to say all the amazing data we've got that show how much better people feel and function after they're doing the program is all down to my exercise prescriptions. If they didn't do it and stick with it and change behavior, you might as well put it in the bin. So a person is a whole and complete being. And that is that multidisciplinary thing that I experienced at RGH. And then the clinical side with my business partner, Mark Brownlow, integrating that with proper education, and the psychology with Serena Simmons, and putting it together in a package that's palatable, that's progressive, that addresses all the important things needed for somebody to be able to change effectively and make it stick, and educate them without patronizing them, without overwhelming them. It's a challenge to do online. So I guess that's the more physical manifestation of that, and we're really excited. We done a pilot service evaluation in the NHS, which one of my tasks over Christmas, kind of loosely, was to finish one of the papers, which I didn't get round to. That's the end of the week. But yeah, we've got some great data, and we're really excited that we're going kind of direct to patient, and so we're raising capital just this next week to expand further. So that's I suppose the physical entity of that, and that's got a research arm to it. So I'm continuing to research and do implementing that into my education and training. That's always embedded into anything that I do, research with joint approach. So we're as I said, we've run the trial, we set it up so that it would mimic an RCT. We've got the quality data from that. And what we'd love to be able to do at some stage is potentially sponsor that a PhD or part PhD that would take that on, or indeed some of the get back to sport education stuff. So it's, I suppose it is creating that physical entity, albeit online, but direct to patient. I guess I'm putting my money where my mouth is now, aren't I? So
yeah, no, definitely. Like in terms of
preaching.
how you psychology and mental, that behaviour change piece is massive. In terms of for clinicians, but it probably people in general, what do you see as the important non-clinical skills for them to be successful?
For who to be successful? Sorry.
For the clinicians. So when you're teaching them in terms of like the S&C piece, or the exercise prescription, or whatever it may be, what do you see as being like the sort of the non-clinical skills that makes a good therapist or clinician?
That's a really good question, and I'd say it's being able to have and develop that trust and rapport with a patient. So you can go in there and you can tell them what to do, how to do it, and this is the best thing that worked for you. But ultimately, if they don't have that trust in you, they don't believe you, they don't have that buy-in, then, as I said before, you might as well just put all your hard work in the bin, because it's not going to get done. So that's something that I've learned along the way as well, and how you relate to people, so they feel heard, they feel listened to, and that you're able to have that they're able to answer questions, and them understanding why they're sat in front of you. So something that Serena teaches a lot on her behavior change courses, and that we've embedded into the joint approach program, is like, why is that person there? And it's got to be more than because my doctor sent me. because that's not there's no intrinsic motivation for that. If you can tap into something that's a little bit more meaningful, and this is where the challenge comes. So if you're in an NHS setting, that appointment might be quite short, and you might have to, maybe you spend 90% of that appointment talking and listening, but you've got the buy-in and you've got maybe 2 exercises you can give them rather than the other way around, and that might be more beneficial. So, why are they in front of you? What are they there for? What are the things that their motivations, their barriers, asking the pertinent questions, listening to the answers, and then again, depending on how many sessions you have with somebody or the length of time you've got with somebody, can you anchor that to something? So that might be a short-term goal. For example, within the next few weeks, I'd like to be able to go for coffee with my friend. I've not been able to do that for blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's a goal. And then you've got that, then that shared decision making, which are MI techniques, aren't they? Motivational interviewing techniques, where you co-create the solution. Again, it enhances people's buy-in. They feel a lot more empowered as a part of the solution, rather than you do this. How many times have you experienced that, where you're not even looked at as a person? You're just a name on a sheet or a number, and you go, okay, what's the problem? This, that, that. Okay, do this, that, then off you go. Like, yes, but this, and there's no scope for you to be a human. So your propensity to engage in something is going to be less than if you feel like you're listened to, you trust that person understands you, you feel like you're part of that development of the solution. Then the propensity to buy in, and then the solution bit is then where your expertise comes from. If it's an exercise-based therapy, if you like, or intervention, that's where again your levels of expertise can then shine and come through, where it's a nicely crafted one. And maybe you only get to do a couple of things that you think are important out of the list of several, but a couple are going to be better than none. So if you can, talk to people, make them feel important and that they're a person, that you hear them, you can anchor that why to something that they value, and that they feel like they've co-created that solution. I mean, that would be, in a very short description, the key things, and that requires no clinical skills at all. That's about being a person, which is, again, as I was saying before, in NHS practice, it's so difficult to do. You've got to get through reams and reams of patients within a ridiculous amount of time, but that's what Serena teaches, all the strategies you might be able to pull out in those time pressured environments. But yeah,
no, that's really interesting. And then in terms of like your own professional development, you're obviously doing a lot of work in like that space of physiology and all those different areas. But like, what, like, for your own, do you read any books around, like you mentioned a few things like people's why, all of that sort of thing? So do you read outside of your subject matter as well?
I do. Less than I'd like to. So I have a folder in my email inbox, which is to read. I'm sure everybody's got one, and it's just stacking up. So every Friday I try to do an hour low intensity on the bike and read at least 1 or 2 papers. So it's an intensity where I'm not, and that's obviously not on the road. That's on an ergometer. Otherwise, that would be quite challenging. No wonder I got knocked off. So yeah, around still, I guess, in the area of science, something that I really enjoy a lot is statistics and biostatistics. But again, time, I guess it's similar, are similar entities. That's what my new course is on about. Actually, it's not statistics, but it's as we've discussed before, measurement and understanding measurement. So what does that number mean? Does it mean anything at all, or actually, how much confidence can you have in that measurement, which is absolutely critical when we're taking any assessment of people. And then, yeah, certainly around behavior change and understanding people, trying to or what might seek to jeopardize what I'd like people to do. You know, how can I help influence people positively? And that's not my wheelhouse. I'll definitely kind of refer on for those things. But I think it's a skill that it would be beneficial throughout life, actually, whether it's clinical or not clinical, kind of being able to talk to people, but hear people as well, making those kind of positive relationships. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
No, it
I'm
does.
just thinking about the stack of books on my on my shelf that I haven't got through yet. Tim Spector, that's another good one.
Which one's that?
The new Science of Eating Well? He's
right.
Yeah, he's one of the most top 100 citing scientists in nutrition science. So things like the microbiome and understanding properties of food and how we respond to food and how these positively and negatively influence us. That's really interesting. Yeah. Human body, it's amazing. The more you read, the more you realize you don't know, isn't it?
Oh no, it is. It just is a can of worms, and I've got the same in terms of the books. And Gabby, she's always like, right, what books can we get rid of? And I'm like, no, keep all them. Is that right? Yeah. So you just got unearthing these boxes of books. It's like, yeah, I need to dedicate some time. But I'm conscious of time for you as well here. So just what would your advice be for people wanting to get into this area? Like any particular things that you would recommend?
That's a good question as well, because this area didn't exist when I got into it. So what is it that you kind of want to do? Is that would be the first thing? Where do you see yourself working? Are you a clinician? Are you more interested in research? Are you interested in coaching and strength and conditioning? And then that would be then how you'd forge that path. But the thing that I think transcends everything and across, I can't think of a discipline that wouldn't be beneficial with, is making connections and meeting people. As I said before, I've been so tremendously lucky about how I've got to where I've got to. I put in a shit ton of hard work, but I've met some amazing people who, utterly humbled to have met them, and they've helped me. And then also, I was actually giving some advice to a friend's niece the other day. Make a nuisance of yourself, as in, if there's somebody that you want to work with or go get some experience with or opportunities that you want to create, contact those people. And this is where it's made a difference when I've been able to give opportunities. You always think of those people that crop up more and more often, and do it in a nice way. I'm not saying kind of badger them nastily, but if you're willing and you're interested and you are open to new opportunities and have ideas, and if you're really passionate about something, push for it, create those opportunities, and make a good case for yourself. People remember, and they remember negative things, but they also remember positive things. And certainly when I was working at, for example, in Trent, there were a couple of students that absolutely stood out from the first year. They knew that they wanted to do something. They got involved in every research project. They got involved in, loads of things. What can I do? Coming to you for extra advice or extra work or that kind of thing. They stood out there absolutely. One of them is a top leading scientist in Deloitte right now, earning, I'm sure, oodles and noodles of cash, making big decisions. So yeah, people, great relationships.
Yeah, definitely endorse that. I'm really conscious of time for you as well here, but we've not even touched on your powerlifting or like your accident as well that you mentioned earlier on. I don't know if you can you just, because I'm really interested in like your powerlifting background. Like how long have you got, by the way?
Yeah, I'm good for another few minutes. Yeah,
cool.
Yeah. Well, that kind of happened by accident, really. So, my sporting, you call it a career? I don't know if it's a career. I played kind of hockey and basketball at university, and then also I played underwater hockey for Great Britain at Octopus, which was something I particularly enjoyed. But the commitments to travelling to Crystal Palace every weekend, should I say, to train, and the financial, because it's obviously not a funded sport, a well-funded sport. The after done that for a few years, it's quite difficult to sustain, particularly during my finals. So I guess I whet my sporting appetite a bit more with basketball. Managed to kind of play National League when I left university. Then I went traveling, and when I came back, I just kind of continued with stuff that I enjoyed doing, like kind of running, and I've always done weight training. And then I've always been egged on by people in the gym. Oh, you should go do this, or you should get on bodybuilding stuff. And like, I'm not standing in a bikini, oil down on a stage. That's not particularly for me. In high heels, can you imagine me? So I wasn't up for that. But I always like kind of lifting heavy stuff, and both me and my brother actually are pretty strong for our size. And then I started to do a bit more deadlifting, and then somebody said you should do a powerlifting competition. So this was when I was teaching at Trent, actually. So I did, and I qualified for British, and then I did the British, and I won the British, and then I did another competition and qualified again. But it's something that I kind of fell into, something that I didn't want to continue to do forever, because just training for 3 lifts only is not something that I could really stick to. Because I enjoy doing other things as well, and you might get that, you certainly do get that conflict. So I was running a lot and cycling a lot and stuff like that. So I just kind of fell into it with committed training, should I say. But yeah, it was enjoyable, but not something that I could do forever. Just doing a deadlift, a squat, and a bench press, and just training around that for you the whole time. Found quite challenging. And the most challenging thing was making weight or not making weight. The prospect of having to be a certain weight. Never had encountered that before. I was always around 60 kilos, and I was competing at that 60 kilo category. So there wasn't really a threat that I wouldn't make it. But oh my God, the anxiety that brought about. Like, took some bloody scales down to, where was it, Bournemouth or whatever, in the car. It's like, that's something I've not encountered before, having played team sports and whatever. You never kind of weigh in. I'm sure people who play combat sports and take part in combat sports understand that. But yeah, that's a funny old thing. So that's how it came about. So I only did it for probably in total, competitively, or total 3 competitions, to be fair, which just happened to be British champions. And yeah, there we go.
Yeah, amazing. And this is definitely the last question. So what 3 things did you learn about yourself and when you had your accident and you're on like the recuperation?
So yeah, that was pretty awful. I was going to say fragility of, but that's not quite right. So what I immediately was worried about and felt really upset about, really affected me, was feeling like I was going to be dispossessed of being able to do the things that I wanted to do. And I still do have limitations, but I'm so fortunate to, like, when I was in hospital, I was messaging Joe Gibson and a consultant friend of mine, and my clavicle's up here, and they're telling me there's nothing wrong. It's like I'd never come across this kind of sternoclavicular issue before. It's quite a rare thing that you maybe see in rugby or the like. So I quickly understood that it was something that there was a real kind of a need to address quickly in terms of time. and that not knowing the prognosis right there and then, there's a real significant threat to not being able to do things because of an instability there if it wasn't addressed properly. So I felt, I wouldn't be able to take part in a good half of my life, and it was devastating, to be honest. And it seems silly when you think about it, if other people are not physically active, who don't lift, swim, even picking my dog up, I wasn't, I wouldn't be able to do things like that. So if you don't kind of do those things, then you'll be like, oh, what's the issue? But if you do, it's like a whole part of my life could have gone. And so what did I learn? Learn to be even more grateful than I was. So I've had some other injuries and other things happen where you kind of, you are grateful for every moment that you have here. But so the gratitude that I was actually here, because there was the potential that I couldn't have been, immediately after impact. And then also and it's a struggle as well in sometimes, when you think, I'm just so frustrated, but actually I have a body that works well and I'm able to push it, and be grateful for that too. So many people don't. I'm so lucky and grateful to everybody that helped me along the way. Those people I just mentioned, plus amazing surgeon Graham Tiddley, strong in Cambridge, and gratitude to have had those connections as well. Because if I didn't, then I don't think for 1 minute I'd be in the position that I am. If it was left to that routine NHS, which is amazing at life preservation, but at an rare MSK condition, I don't think I'll be in the same position now. So definitely gratitude, definitely trying to get that, what's it all for? That work-life balance a little better. I'm struggling with that. So, because you know what it's like when you want to keep pushing, but trying to consciously take a step back and just go, okay, so what's important, and put things into perspective. So those two things really, and I don't think, well, as I said, I've had several injuries before where I've realised how grateful I am, but this was on another level. So to everybody that helped me, and the fact that I'm actually here. So, yeah. Don't know if that
answers. Yeah, no, that's good. I think that's a pretty good and intense and genuine answer. So, yeah, I think it's definitely, it's not always easy. It's easy to say, oh, be grateful for something, but it is massive, isn't it, to come back from something like that and be able to do what you can do. It's great if you can be grateful about it.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here and blessed to have to know the people that I do. So
brilliant. No, well, I think that's a great note to finish on. So thank you for staying on a bit longer, and thanks for sharing your story. And yeah, I've really enjoyed it. So
likewise, my pleasure. It's nice to although I say it's nice to talk about something different, but it sounds so egotistical to talk about myself. Forget that.
No, it's been really good to know, Claire. Really appreciate your time, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, likewise, Andy. Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.